Hello and a warm welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. I'm Claire Pride, filling in for Annette Young. Coming up, how much ground did women gain under King Abdullah? We look at reforms the Saudi leader introduced amid criticism from rights groups. Plus, I'll be discussing the gender pay gap with UNESCO's Professor Jane Freedman, as Dutch women under 30 earn more than men. And we meet Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who calls herself a happy African feminist. First, in a very discreet way, he was a strong advocate of women. Christine Lagarde's words about Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah have shocked people across the world. He led a country where women are restricted by far more than a ban on driving. They can't travel, work or marry without the approval of a male guardian. King Abdullah did introduce reforms, but how substantial are they? Olivia Salazar-Winspear reports.
It was a surprising homage to the late monarch of Saudi Arabia, one of the most powerful women in the world, defending King Abdullah, saying he'd left an important legacy for women's rights.
In a very discreet way, he was a strong advocate of women. It was very gradual, appropriately so probably for the country, but I discussed that issue with him several times, and he was a strong believer.
Before his death at 90 years old, King Abdullah had decreed that women will be able to vote and stand in the next municipal elections. In 2009, Noura Al-Faiz was appointed Deputy Minister for Education, the highest cabinet position attributed to a woman. And since 2013, women have also been allowed to enter the Shura Council, the Sovereign Advisory Board, but they're only allowed to intervene on matters that concern children. Saudi women can also represent their country at the Olympic Games and become lawyers and defend their clients in court. It's certainly progress, but daily life is still fraught with injunctions, as this artist living in Dubai explains.
Women are perpetually treated as secondary citizens throughout their life. They cannot get a job without a male guardian permission, they cannot travel, they cannot go into hospital, cannot open a bank account. Multiple things.
With no male chaperone, women can't even move around their towns nor within the country. Driving is banned. Getting a driving license has become a symbol in the fight for women's rights. Saudi Arabia is the only country where this ban exists. According to Amnesty International, women who've defied the rules and passed their test have been sentenced to 50 lashes of the whip. Others are still in prison.
We are continuing to ask for this simple right and other rights for women, not only driving, because it's a whole package. It's not just, I think driving is a symbolic for all the situation for women in Saudi Arabia.
Women are also unable to initiate a divorce. The request must come from a husband. The official punishment for adultery is a public stoning, although this is less and less common. As Christine Lagarde says, there has been progress on some fronts, but it remains extremely discreet. All eyes will now be on King Abdullah's successor to see if he follows in these tentative footsteps.
To a court decision in Egypt now that's considered a small turning point in the fight against female genital mutilation. A doctor's been sentenced to 2 years in prison after a 13-year-old died following the procedure, which was outlawed in 2008. It was the first trial of its kind in a country where female genital mutilation is still widely practiced. According to the UN, more than 90% of women in Egypt under 50 have been subjected to the procedure. Now, as more women enter the workforce and reach high-level position, there's still one thing that very much sets them apart from their male colleagues: the fact that in many countries they earn significantly less than men. In the European Union, the average gender pay gap is about 16%. In the US, it's 19%. But according to a report by the Dutch government, women under the age of 30 working full-time have started making more than men. That's also the case in the UK for women up to the age of 40. So, are we seeing the beginning of the end to the gender pay gap? Joining me now is Professor Jane Freedman, a gender specialist with UNESCO. Hello, thank you very much indeed for coming in. So we're seeing that for some women at least, the situation is getting better. Do you think that this means that possibly in 2 or 3 generations' time, the gap will be closed?
I think it's obviously very pleasing and very optimistic that women, and that younger women, are now earning the same or more in some circumstances as their male colleagues. And I think it shows the impact of women's greater access to education and training. We've seen that women are now in many countries in Europe the majority of university graduates, and they have access to more skills and training that equip them to have to go into the workforce and to earn the same or more than men. However, I think we need to take those figures with a pinch of salt and look at the wider problem, because although younger women, and these figures are looking at the average hourly earnings for young men and women, and if you look over the whole of a woman's career, you see that there's still a big gender pay gap. As you said, the average in the European Union is 16%. In the UK, it's 19%. So there are lots of factors. For example, the fact that women take maternity leave. Women often work part-time, which really hurts their career. It hurts their career progression, their chances of training, of promotion, and also their pensions when they retire. So it's not necessarily the fact that if we just wait, this gender pay gap is going to go away.
Now, the Dutch Emancipation Report suggests that part of the problem is that women don't ask for a pay rise. In fact, a lot of women don't even negotiate their salary when they're starting a new job. 42% of men do versus 25% of women. So why do you think that is?
Well, I think women are still socialised. We still, when girls and boys grow up and young women are still socialised, perhaps to be more reticent about asking for things, about asking for pay gaps. There are also studies that show that for women who work, the most important thing is to be able to balance work and family life, because women are still doing most of the childcare, most of the unpaid work in the home. And so women might prefer to negotiate, for example, flexible working hours rather than asking for more pay, because for them that would be the most important thing. So that's also a problem for women, you know, being able to have higher pay and have promotion, also while balancing that with family responsibilities.
So do you think that's why the report also highlights the fact that many women don't want those high-level positions? Because understandably so, there's a lot of emphasis put on the fact that more women now occupy high-level positions, but perhaps they don't want that responsibility because it doesn't come with flexibility.
Yes, I think that's a big problem for a lot of women, and it's a big problem that women are still those who are expected to do most of the childcare. And the countries, in fact, that have seen a big decrease in the gender pay gap are the countries which encourage men and women to take parental leave. And so to really change that norm that it's women that should be looking after the children primarily and balancing career and family life.
Like Iceland?
Iceland, also Norway, some of the Scandinavian countries where where parental leave is divided between men and women. That really leads to an increase in gender equality in the workplace and a decrease in the gender pay gap.
Now, if we widen this out a little bit, how much does a country's competitiveness in the long term depend on whether it educates and utilises, so to speak, its women?
Well, it's clear that women are 50% of the population and of the workforce. So if women are underutilised, it can be a big obstacle for a country's economic progress. And there are the studies by the World Bank, for example, on a global level, which shows that where there's more gender equality in the workplace, where women are better trained and better educated, it really has a positive impact on economic development of that country. So it's good for women, but it's also good for society as a whole.
And it's worth pointing out that the report does highlight the fact that when men and women have the same level of education and experience, the gender pay gap decreases incredibly. It's very, very small.
And the gender pay gap is smaller in professions, for example, in medicine, in law, where you need a certain level of qualification and training. So having women going more into those kind of qualified professions, also in things like technology, women used to not really be trained to work in scientific or technological careers, and encouraging women to take up those careers can reduce the gender pay gap.
Okay, Professor Jane Freedman, thank you very much indeed for coming in. And finally, she's an inspiration to women across the globe. I'm talking about Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who's written an essay called "We Should All Be Feminists." We went to meet her when she was here in Paris, promoting her award-winning book, Americana.
There was not an empty seat in the Paris theatre. All had come to listen to Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie talk about her latest novel, Americana, a love story about a Nigerian immigrant who goes to the US. The writer's popularity keeps growing. Americana will soon be a film with Brad Pitt and Lupita Nyong'o, and her recent speech on feminism has been sampled in one of Beyoncé's songs. After the discussion, her faithful readers queued for a book signing.
I think she deals with really real issues that apply to me. I feel like I relate to the characters that she writes about, them being female, black. I think her protagonists are really realistic and really likable.
She inspires many young women to be feminists and to fight for themselves. I'm sure her books will be read for many years. They are also for future generations.
We meet her in a quieter context in the office of her French publisher Gallimard. Like Americana's main character, she explains how she only discovered the issue of race when she lived for a few years in the US.
I wasn't black until I went to America. I became black in America. In Nigeria, I didn't think of myself as black. I think in Nigeria, my identity markers were religion and ethnicity. It's discovering that being black means something, and those things that blackness means are often not very positive things. If you have an identity thrust on you, you don't have a choice but to try and understand what it's all about.
Nigeria often makes headlines because of the killings carried out by Boko Haram in the northeast of the country. But it's also the continent's vibrant cultural hub, and no Nigerian personifies this better than Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Well, that's it for this show. If you'd like to comment on what you've just seen, you can head to our Facebook page, France24.51%, or send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far. Do keep those comments coming in. Until our next programme, bye for now.